Like,
No,
you gotta
nothing
just
ever
start over.
disconnects on my end. My stuff lays static 100%
Yeah,
of the time.
but like when you connect in someone else over the internet
Yeah.
from
Well, like I
another
said though, I
country.
think what happened was I think it was the Discord streamer mode
Hmm.
that filtered out the incoming sound.
Were you doing it? Were you streaming through Discord and not OBS?
No, no, no. The call is done over Discord.
Yeah, but like,
But
why would Discord go into streamer mode if you're doing it through
because
OBS?
what because like there's like little things that you don't want, like you can have on your stream but you just kind of don't want. So like little like window sounds and all this other like little piddly crap, like people joining your channel, people leaving the channel. It turns off all that
Oh,
shit. It shuts all that stuff off.
that's cool.
Yeah,
Okay.
it is very cool, but like it fucked me over in this one.
Yeah. I feel like you should be able to have like a streamer setting where, or maybe just make like a channel where you can hear the, like, you have to turn people's audio on manually, so you just turn the one person that you want talking on, or however many people,
Right.
and then everyone else like turn the sound effects off for when they enter or leave, and turn off like make sure they come in muted so they can't like just start talking and everything.
You know what? I'm sure there's actually a bot that does that, but because I do this show like right now pretty infrequently, I've never looked
Hmm.
into it, but I probably will because my goal is to do 52 episodes this year.
Oh,
I want to get through one a
like
week.
one a week?
Yeah,
Nice.
that's why, and I cannot thank you enough for helping me out this week because this was the week Brian's episode was actually supposed to go up. So,
Oh, that's fun.
but I was like, oh, like when it happened, I'm like, I'm like,
Yeah.
no, I really appreciate it, though. Like I can't thank you honestly. So
Yeah,
yeah,
no problem.
so yeah, we'll get started here. Ready?
Okay.
Okay.
Oh wait, hold on. Before, sorry.
Yep.
What is this about? You never told me.
Oh, sorry. So this show, it's actually just a business and professional like development show about like just your industry,
Oh.
like you and your industry, like just what is a solution architect, what like I don't know. Did Brian actually go through what we talked about with him?
No.
Oh, we just talked about like like how he got into programming, what you find useful like for new people coming into the industry. Just pretty bog standard stuff.
Okay.
Trust me, you'll be fine. Just
Okay.
you'll be totally fine. Okay, ready?
All right.
And
Yeah.
in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. What's up, everyone? How are y'all doing today? My name is Arif. Nope, we're gonna do that again one more time. I was not happy with that. That's the wrong show. That was the Daily Chat intro. Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Button Mash episode 10. I guess actually 10A because the last episode that we recorded got kind of one-sided, wherein the guest audio did not come through. But luckily, though, we rectified that problem, and now we're back with this episode 10A, and lovely Rachel Brown, who is a solutions architect, is kind enough to join me on today's episode. Rachel, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, not a problem.
So, tell us about yourself. Like what, because you have a very unique past where you and I are kind of in that same vein where we have lots of skills in different areas. You and I actually aren't too far apart in the sense that you and I have both done media production and computer science together, right?
Yeah. So originally I wanted to be a game designer because I was a little kid. And uh so I got into, computer science because, puzzles always amused me and everything, but I wanted to be able to be self-sufficient and not have to rely on anyone. So I also learned how to do like the animation. So I do like 3D modeling and rigging and textures and everything. I got really into doing all like the Photoshop, and I started out in Flash and moved into Maya for the animation side. And but now professionally, because like art doesn't really pay well, um, I went with the programming aspect. And so now I am doing solutions architect for ArcWeb Technologies.
Very
And yeah, and basically what that is ArcWeb is a development consultant shop. And I talk to clients and do all of the requirements gathering. And then after figuring out like what they want to build, I go through and figure out how to build it.
Okay. So the road you've taken to become a solutions architect is actually very long and winding, because I've known you now for going on 2 years, and I've watched your career evolve over the course of that time. So prior to becoming a solutions architect, you were doing like project management, weren't you?
Yeah, I'm doing a little bit of that now, less so in the solutions architect role. But you'll never really step away from that if you're like leading a team.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, before, like even before I became a project manager, I was just like a junior developer, and then I ended up being like really good at doing the requirements gathering and just kind of like running the projects and everything. So it really helped step me into the role of being the project manager. And eventually, um, my company at the time had merged into another one, and they reassigned my role as software development manager. Just because I was writing a lot more technical stories and scope and everything, and doing a lot of the database schema architecture and design. So it just kind of all blossoms from there.
That's really cool. Now, what did you think about the timeline in going from a junior developer to a project manager? Did you pass through all those different layers that are supposed to exist, like junior, intermediate, senior, or did you kind of just like take an express route over from junior developer to project management with just a bigger time spread?
Yeah. It was kind of I just kind of like pass into it. So when you work for a startup, and that's where I originally was I was at this really small startup company, and I kind of did a little bit of everything. So even though I was a junior developer, there was a lot of projects where I was the sole developer on it, and I was also like the QA, and I had to come up with all of the testing myself, manual and automated. And when you start having to do that, and then you start getting to talk directly to the clients because your boss doesn't really have time to do that, it really throws you into the deep end really fast, and you either sink or swim. And so I guess I just swam, and they it was a crash course, but I learned a lot. And so just from trying to figure out how to do things and thinking about like, all right, after talking to the client, they want to, do X. How do I build that? What's the data schema I need? What, you know, like what's the best way to actually achieve that goal in the most efficient way? How do I measure my like the performance of my systems? All of that you start picking up on really fast when you have to do it all yourself.
Okay.
And I think the only thing I didn't really get heavy into was deployment and DevOps and stuff. So my boss, who was like the CTO, was always the one who like set up our servers and everything for us. Um, but that left him with kind of little time, and he was focused on bigger projects. So I just got all of the smaller ones, and they're like, well, you're kind of already doing a project manager workload. We'll just send you to get, Scrum certified, and come back and tell us what you learned. And at the end of that, like I took like a crash course, 2-day course and got Scrum certified. And I figured out that there's a lot of stuff we were doing wrong.
Okay.
And or not wrong, but we could be doing better, because really, when it comes to like whatever methodology you choose to use, it's a methodology that's supposed to help improve and make you more efficient. And so if it's not, and if it's not working for you, then like don't use it. And you're like, these are just supposed to be tools that are supposed to help, and if they're not helping, get rid of them.
Right.
So yeah,
Scrum,
like
sorry. I just want to touch on Scrum is the agile methodology training, right?
yeah. So it's the process, I guess, like there's like Scrum meetings, which is the process of doing like daily check-ins, and they're supposed to be really quick, just like 15-minute check-ins, and they call them like stand-ups, where people are actually supposed to stand, but no one does.
Right.
And uh and it's just, really quick, like, what did you do yesterday? What do you plan on doing today? And what do you have? And if you think the conversation's going to go for more than like those quick check-ins, you need to take the conversation offline, so you're not wasting everyone else's time who's in the meetings.
Okay.
But just doing like those kind of like daily check-ins, we were only doing them weekly, and it just helps keep people on track, and it helps you figure out, like, if you're getting off track, it helps you figure it out faster, and what you can do to get back on track if there's any kind of blockers. um what ends up happening is whoever is kind of like the high man on the totem pole usually ends up their job just becomes figuring out how to remove blockers. And they're usually end up too busy to write any actual code, and so they just kind of depend on the other people around them to be able to, like, you know efficiently communicate, I guess, like, all of their issues, and just get down in the weeds and do the work. And so managers actually should really just be trying to either plan out the next sprint, which could be a blocker, right? Like, if there's nothing to do, that's an issue, right?
Mhm.
um and fix any problems that might arise that might be preventing someone from doing that. And if your machine is good, then that's all like certain people will be doing on the team, is just trying to, like, be the firefighters and solve the problems. And
Right.
it lets other people not context switch as much, which can really like kill productivity.
So you worked in a waterfall environment too, or have you always been just agile only?
When you're a consultant, there's always a little fall methodology, just because people don't sign contracts without knowing what they're gonna get first,
Mhm.
right? So, like, in your SOW, you say, "All right, we are planning on developing these features. It's going to take this much time and cost this much money. I need you to sign this." And so that right there is a waterfall methodology, where you're listing out everything you're gonna do beforehand, right?
Right.
The agile part of it comes in, where if you keep that like list vague enough, um the actual how it gets implemented and everything like that can change depending on, like, how much time you have left in your budget to focus on something.
Okay.
So, every if the typical sprint is 2 weeks, but it can be, 4 weeks or whatever you want it to be. And you say you want to get, these stories or these tasks or whatever done in this 2-week sprint. And so at the end of it, you say you either did or you didn't, and hopefully you did, right? And you're not behind.
Right.
And you give the demo to the client's happy with it, or they're like, no, I didn't like how that feature was developed. I want you to, like, redo it, or I want something else to be done instead. And so that's kind of part of the backlog grooming. And what happens is when they say they want something else to be done or they want to like add a feature in, you can definitely do that, even though it might not have been part of the original contract. But what happens is because it's like a new thing, it's out of scope. So you either have to trade something out or you just have to make it very clear that like this is going to push the timeline back and it's going to increase the cost.
The cost, the ever dreaded word anybody who has to sign that contract has to hear.
Right? And so like it is waterfall methodology technically because you're saying these things for this much money, right? And like there's not really a good way around that when
Oh, you cut out. Hello?
Oh, hello?
Hi. Okay, sorry, you just cut out there.
Sorry.
So you're saying about the waterfall, like it like technically this is waterfall because you're having to pre-state a lot of stuff and show an end product and then get a review back, right?
Right, exactly. And but the thing that makes it like agile is the fact that you can change out features or as you go instead of like waiting until the very end, which could be like a 6-month project, right? So instead of waiting until all 6 months are done for the client to come back and say, I didn't like that at all. Like that's not anything what I was thinking about. You get those 2-week check-in periods for the client to give their feedback right away and potentially change out features that they want in the scope.
Okay. Now that you've done both the waterfall and agile methodologies, do you lean one way or the other? Because I was a developer for that one product way back in summer of 2018, and they were saying agile this, agile that. They were waterfall as all get out. Like there was nothing agile about them except how often they would like message you asking for things.
That's not the same as agile.
No, right? No, I know. But no, so like now that you've done both though, which do you find is more in your preference and more towards like the more modern way that we're trying to do stuff? Do you think waterfall still has a place here, or do you think companies and people should just move into the agile methodology?
I think more routine check-ins are really good. Just because if it's really useful to know, 2 weeks into a project if you're completely wrong versus 6 months into a project finding out you are completely wrong the whole time.
That's very fair. That's a very good point.
So like I would say agile is pretty awesome, but again, there's some things like if you're a pure agile or like an agile purist, I feel like I've met some people who are purists and who kind of can't see the forest through the trees, so to speak.
Okay.
Like they're so dead set on following agile ceremony that they lose the meaning and the reason behind it. And there are definitely good reasons to follow some of that agile ceremony and everything. But you should really always understand why you're doing something and like be able to say if it's working or not.
Right.
And so it comes back to if it's not working for you, like just ditch it. There's no point.
No, that's totally fair. So how long were you doing this like development and / project manager role before you just moved into being a project manager?
That's a bit of a loaded answer. We
always ask the hard questions here. Always.
I was technically only like a junior dev for about I don't know, like 6 to 8 months ish.
Okay.
Before I moved into an actual project manager role, but even when I was a project manager, I was still doing development. So at that point I was doing like project management, like client relations, architecture, development, QA. I was kind of like a one-man shop for a little bit.
Right, and you were kind of just like learning on the fly for a lot of these positions. School only prepped you so much, or did your schooling in your comp sci degree like teach you all of like architecture, PM, like in a full scope, or did you only have like enough knowledge to like know where to get started and then just jump in through the Google Stack Overflow?
Yeah, school is an interesting thing. I was lucky enough that my school was pretty good in both like computer science and the digital media aspect. Like a lot of people move from all over the world to go to my school because of the digital media part.
Okay.
Um but and so like and we had a lot of our teachers worked in the industry, so like some of our teachers would only be there for half of the year because their job took them away for the other half, like the real job.
So it was like a vocational kind of school?
No, it was the 4-year university. It's just like all of the teachers were actively working in the
Gotcha,
industry
okay.
as well. Yeah.
Those are the
And
best
it's all
schools.
on contract. Yeah. It was really cool because you got to actually meet like, people who are really developing games or, really doing animations and stuff. And so it kind of sucked because they would like float in and out, which makes it, kind of difficult teaching and student relationships.
Right.
But like the real world knowledge you get from them is pretty awesome.
Oh, absolutely. Like that, those are the best instructors you can ever have, are the ones who have a real job that's not a tenured professor at a school.
Yeah, right? And like even our tenured professors had real jobs. Like it's kind of a weird setup. I know one of our tenured professors was like a writer in for TV shows and stuff. I don't know which ones exactly.
Wow.
I forget.
That's
Yeah.
really cool.
So
So did your school though teach you like all these skills that you needed, or was it kind of just you learned a little bit of like PMing, but like because in a computer science degree, you're more always taught as a developer. Like they just teach you that as like this is going to be your job, right?
yeah. There was one class on the computer science side that actually took you through doing the whole I don't even know if you would call it an agile methodology. Like they tried. But it didn't go on long enough, but it was like your capstone class, and so we had an actual client come in and they talked to the entire class for a class, so you were able to get a sense of the project, what they wanted, ask any questions or anything, and so that was your like one shot at requirements gathering. But because no one had experience or like understood that aspect of it before, like no one asked any like real questions. So when you're like halfway through the project, you're like, shit, what do they actually want? Right. You're like, well, I blew my only chance to ask them.
Right. Much of your experience was learned on the fly.
Yeah.
Because
yeah,
that's
definitely.
Just it. Like, even though you were doing dev work for like sole dev work for 6 to 8 months, like before becoming this like hybrid progression path that you took, that is a pretty fierce fire. Just like when I was doing my clinical rotations, 2 weeks in a real clinic, man, that will teach you some stuff that school never could have prepared you for.
Yeah, it's kind of insane, especially because like school didn't really like they introduced the fact that this thing happened, but they didn't really explain it, right? The teacher was like, yeah, this is your chance to ask all the questions, but no one had ever shown you what it was really like to be in a client like meeting like that.
Right.
Before that meeting where the teacher didn't say anything, right? He was just like waiting for the class to ask questions and the class didn't. So I couldn't really call it a real client like requirements gathering meeting, even though that's what it was supposed to be, because like no one knew what to do.
Right. So that is unfortunate. Like, and that seems to be a pretty big flaw in the education system, just from what I'm seeing. I know because I actually had 2 PM classes and I still had no idea what I was doing. Like I was still
It's
lost.
yeah, it's crazy until you see it all come together.
Yeah.
Um, and so like when you're in the real world, like I learned 100 times more, 100 times faster just doing my actual job than when I was like in school.
Right.
But one of the things that I was always very meticulous about was taking notes. So, like even in elementary school, I would take ridiculous amounts of notes. At first it was
Yeah.
just because I was told to. But then it got to the point where like if I wasn't writing things down, I was falling asleep. So that's what kept me awake in class. And then I could use my notes to get A's on all the tests, and I didn't have to actually do a lot of the work.
So in grad school, through undergrad and grad school, I would take a stupid amount of notes because you had to. Like you were not passing the class unless you had taken notes. That just was not happening. But I remember like after you do schooling for so long, you kind of just understand how the game works. And I know when I just did this computer informations degree, in 4 years, maybe across like 25 classes or whatever, probably filled up a grand total of 2 notebooks worth of notes. Like it just wasn't something I did anymore. And part of me now wishes I probably should take notes in like especially those like once again the PM classes and all that. I'm like probably should take notes in them. Like yeah, mistakes were made. Big ones.
It's more important like writing down how to be a good PM isn't as important as writing down what your client wants,
Yeah.
right? Like I would say I probably didn't really need to take any notes during college, and I only need to take notes when I'm talking to people,
Yeah.
right?
That's totally
And
fair.
so like one of the things that really helped me in becoming a project manager and just like made my career 100 times better was just the fact that I took ridiculous amounts of notes. So when people came up and questioned me, I always had like quotes back to them and be like, no, this person said XYZ. That's why we did, that's why we did it this way because that's what you guys wanted. And even like when the CEO was talking to me, or like we would be in a meeting with some, other people who could never remember what they had said the minute before, I would always just like pull up exactly from, what they had said with their quotes back to them and going like, no, this is what you said. Here's the picture you drew. Like I have everything. And so it got
Arguing with
sorry.
you must suck.
So it got to the point where when people would come up to me and they'd be like, oh, Rachel said this, so it must be true. Like they didn't even question it after a while because they're like, she just takes so many goddamn notes that like anything she says, it must be true. And if she doesn't have it in her notes, it was probably never said.
So if you took this many notes, I'm just going to deviate a slight bit here. Why not just become a lawyer?
I mean, I don't want to be that evil.
like if you're ever going to take that many notes and just keep throwing information back at people, like, I'm just saying contract law is right there on the table. It appears to be a viable option.
It's definitely a thing. I really like doing I like computers more than people.
That is fair. I can appreciate that. And now moving upwards in your career, because you've been doing this role in this capacity, you were doing this role for how long? Like 5, 6 or 4 or 5 years?
Yeah, something like that.
Now you eventually moved on from this original company and moved over to your new one now, where you're acting as the solutions architect, or where you are the solutions architect. And
yeah,
Do you find there's like a lot of difference now between being a solutions architect and being a PM? Like, is there a big leap? Is it a lateral leap, a diagonal kind of like bishop leap? Is it
Um, so like I should say that originally when I first became the PM, I was in a consultant dev shop. And at one point, we merged into another company to become an internal dev team instead of consultant dev,
okay?
which is like a huge change in and of itself. And that's when I became the software development manager. However, I was still doing all of the other things. Like I was still doing QA management. I was a product manager. I did like I still did architecture, right? I did a lot of DBA and I did a little bit of DevOps. Um, I even did like a lot of analytics or like helping out with the analytics team. And so I was kind of doing it all.
Okay.
So moving over to this company now as a solution architect, uh, I feel like I'm doing way less, which is fantastic.
Hmm.
Um, and way more of what I want to do versus like I'm the only one who can do it because you fired everyone else.
Right.
Uh, and so like it feels better just because like I'm only doing my one role, right? With maybe a little bit of PM work depending on how busy my actual PM is.
Okay. Now,
Uh yeah.
I'm sorry, in the order of a hierarchy, for team structure, does the solution architect go like lateral to a PM, or are you under the PM, or are you above the PM, like below the team lead but above PM?
Well, so there's like a lot of question about that, and I think it depends on who the PM is and like what your team dynamic is. So being in the consultant shop again, our teams are like constantly being torn apart and rebuilt with different people and everything, and so it's really about who you're working with, and
Okay.
you'll always have a different experience. However, if you ask my boss, he would definitely say that architect should either be the lead or at least on par with the PM.
Okay.
And like if not actually leading the team. And so like some of my projects I'm definitely the team lead. And other projects I take more of a back seat to the PM just depending how much the PM wants to do on that project or like how busy they are with other projects.
Very cool. So, what are you exactly a solution architect for? And not, I mean this in like where I just came from, my company, we had a architect for the network of the company, but then we had another architect for the database of the company. So we had like separate architects for separate things.
I would say I'm the architect for everything on a project.
Oh wow.
Um, so it's like each project has one architect at our company.
Okay.
Um, and the way that like our company's trying to get to, and we're like working towards this, and I think we're doing really well at it. But we're just not quite there yet. Um, is when we have essentially like four. I want to make sure I get this right. Four phases technically of that we can assist people in is kind of like our pitch, right?
Hmm.
And so it's like strategy, design, build, and I want to say support, but we don't really do support, and we don't. I think we've only had one strategy, like one client actually want to use us for the strategy, because most of the time, the strategy portion they've already figured out before they get to us,
Okay.
right? So they just come to us with like, okay, we know what we want to build. We just need a design and to actually like build it, right? And so like the idea is that because most of our projects are design going into build, is that the solution architect would be there during the design phase and the like beginning of the build phase. And what that means is during the design phase is when you're really like trying to do all the requirements gathering and really figuring out exactly what the client wants and what it's going to look like and how it's going to work and like how the whole system's going to work, right?
Hmm.
And then starting into the build phase, you're actually, building the product. And so being there at the beginning is great because then you can be there to suss out any like remaining details that might not have been covered in the design phase. You can make sure the team gets onboarded correctly and all the knowledge is transferred and finish up any like last minute documents you need to do.
Okay.
But then the idea is that the solution architect will transfer the project over to a software architect and they'll take it from there and kind of run the rest of the build, right? So you set them up for success and then they just like keep going.
Right.
And that way the solution architect is free to take on the next project.
So what if somebody like coming out of school,
Mhm.
when they look at a solutions architect, when you say like you're helping put together all the requirements and all that, so are you not coding anymore, or do you still have to actually get in the trenches, so to speak, and get your hands dirty?
You do. You do it much less. So again, like as the leader of projects and everything, or like managers or anything, your main responsibility is to make sure the team has what it needs to be able to be successful.
Okay.
And what that usually means is, kind of putting out fires or removing blockers, getting anything that the team actually needs. Because what happens is your developers will want to be kind of, I want to say almost siloed. Context switching is a huge thing and it's a huge cost. And so you know how you were talking about your one team, they were like pinging you every 2 minutes
Yes.
to change something, and that's like a pain, right?
Yes. I wake up with
Like
nightmares still. I've been gone from that
and
team for almost half a year.
yeah, and that's context switching. That's taking you out of your like development is hard and it's complex and you have to sit there and think. And if you're deep in thought about something and all of a sudden someone comes in and interrupts that thought with like, "Oh, what if we did this instead?" or like, "Oh, like don't forget about these things." That interrupts you and you kind of have to start over or like backtrack a little bit and it wastes a lot of time. And if you're doing that, like, clients need a lot of touch point. And if you're doing that every half hour, you're not going to get very far.
So,
So,
fun story about that. When they were pinging us a lot, okay, we are getting
Mhm,
ready to push the entire new revamp of the software, completely rebuilt from the ground up. It was basically version 2.
mhm,
And the other dev and I, so he was an intern, I was a contractor. We're saying they're live testing this, like on Twitch TV. We are live testing all this stuff, and the quote unquote project manager, this potato over here, he pings us, "Hey, I need you guys to update your tickets," and we're like, kind of busy over here. We'll get to it. Don't worry. I need you to update them now. It, when they ping you like every 30 seconds and then pop off with something like that, the whole thing, man, like Mount Katatoa just blew up. And I was like, and this is probably what turned me off uh to ever wanting to be a dev ever again, was this one particular like contract job. Because it, like you said, when you're so deep in thought and they keep taking you out of it, it makes it so hard to get your job done. It just puts extra stress on you that is
mhm.
very much unneeded.
Exactly. And so like it's my job to kind of or I'm not 100% sure about the architect, like the solutions architect, but I always feel like it's my job as kind of like more of the leader of the team to block that from happening to the rest of my team members. I want them to be able to be very comfortable and, you know, really focus on what they need to do in order to deliver a good product. I don't mind being the person that gets bugged every 2 minutes to like stop and think about something else that's like completely 180 or not even related, right?
Right.
And I always feel like that's kind of my job is to be that wall between those, you know, annoying not annoying,
No,
but
they're
you
annoying.
know.
Like let's call it what it is. Let's look. Anyone who's ever seen this show and has ever worked in a corporate environment, you know what we're talking about. I have never seen any corporate industry be different from any other. In some
Mhm.
way, they are all the same and all annoying on an equal plane,
Right.
right? Like
It's true.
let's not mince
But
words over here. It's just
uh
the nature of how things have to operate sometimes. You have to almost ping and bother people to get stuff done.
it's definitely a thing, and you don't want people to, like, forget about it or lose sight of it. Like,
Right.
I totally understand there's a place for it, but you don't have to ping every single person on the team. You can just have a single point of contact and, like, just deal with them, so that way the rest of the team can focus,
Yeah.
and as long as that person's responsible enough to be able to, you know, take in whatever needs to be taken in, and then make sure that it gets done in an orderly manner, then you're good.
So now let's. I'm just gonna rewind a tiny bit here. Getting back to like new people. Say a person realizes that they hate coding, such as myself. But say they're like that and they're like, okay, this sounds like something they can do. Where it's like more business focused. It's tech focused, but it's business focused, and it's not getting your hands as dirty as normal. What would be the pathway you would suggest that they would have to go through to get to your tier? Because you are really high up in the IT ladder. Like, do you think they should have to start as a developer and move their way up? Because I have met project managers who have no technical experience whatsoever, and it has made projects unimaginably annoying to try and execute.
I would say, it depends what you're going after, right? So, like, if you're a product manager or a project manager, which is slightly different, um, I don't think it's as necessary to come from a development background. However, you should definitely work on a development team where you're not like the leader, like where you're actually experiencing having to do the work with someone else like leading and seeing like what you like about them and what you don't and what you wish could happen and what you know what you wish wouldn't happen,
Right.
and then use that experience to help do it yourself. And then once you start doing the actual project management yourself, seeing like, oh, you know, like this thing that I always thought was really annoying that my leader did, they did it because of this other reason, and I understand that now. Maybe I have a better way of handling that issue, or you know, maybe I don't, and this is just the way it has to be.
Right. Okay. Now, is there any like certifications are all the rage these days? We're seeing them now. We're seeing more certs every single day for things that I didn't even know you can get certified in. Just prior to us doing this show, I got an email saying get certified in Microsoft Excel. I was like, is that really a
That's a thing.
certification that you need? Like,
It's
you know, I'm
not.
no I'm no mathematician, but I really feel like that one's just kind of like, no one's gonna look at that and say, well, we gotta hire that guy. Like he's Microsoft Excel certified. Where else are we gonna find somebody who can load up the spreadsheets? So do you feel there's certifications that are needed to get to this tier? Like there's Six Sigma, there's Bacock, there's what is the other one I know? Oh my god. I Okay, so there's Six Sigma, there's Macaque. We're just gonna go with those two for now. Do you feel like they're actually like needed now? Oh, PMP, there's the PMP certification. ITIL. There's ITIL. See, I knew I'd get there eventually. I always do.
It depends on the job you're going for and like what the person cares about who's like trying to hire you, right?
Mm-hmm.
I personally don't think that they're needed, right? Like, I don't necessarily care that you're certified. I care whether you can do the job or not.
Right. And that seems to be coming from people who have more practical experiences in that. That's always the answer I see. And then people who are kind of laterally moving into a role, just they seem to, I see, put more emphasis on that than people who have like come up through the ranks like you, like people like you.
It's a thing. In big companies where you see millions of resumes a day, right? You might not care about the people who aren't certified because it's like one less thing you have to check out yourself. You can just be like, do they have this? Nope. All right, let's move on to the next person.
Right, the filter.
Yeah. And
amazingly enough,
it's like having the college degree, right? Like, do you really need a $10,000 piece of paper? No.
Wow, 10,000, you got a bargain. You got a bargain and a
whatever, 150,000, 100,000. I don't know. I had scholarships.
Yeah, no, I definitely do. And I can tell you right now, even those three numbers that you just rattled off, you're still below what I pay.
I'm sorry.
Look at this way. I could have bought a really nice like set of cars for what I paid for all my degrees. But no, getting back to what you're saying about needing about trying to beat the filters.
Yeah. So like, going into a tech related field, like if you're trying to be a developer, most companies won't even look at you if you don't have that bachelor's degree, right? Unless they're like a really small company and you've proven through like your projects and stuff that you're capable of doing the work. They're only going to look at if you have that bachelor's degree or not, at the very least.
Right.
And so, it's the way I used to hear it is that it's not about the actual degree itself. It's about whether you can persevere through like a difficult time, right? Because like college is hard. It's a lot of work. Depending what classes.
I was gonna say that very much depends on the degree.
At least computer science is hard. It's a lot of work.
It is an extraordinary amount of work.
And so it more shows that you can persevere and you can keep going and not give up, right? Like, however long it takes you, you put in the effort, you tried, and you succeeded, essentially.
Right.
And so I think that's what people are more looking for than anything. Also, filter.
Yeah,
it's an easy filter.
It is. But it's funny though, because especially for a role like a developer, where I know some people who don't have degrees who are just rock star devs, and the filter actually in some way I feel like hurts some companies because of those filters. They're filtering out some very talented people that could have like blown away whoever did end up getting the position. And
I totally agree.
And it's just like, wow, it's like all like, and I get it because like you said, big companies especially, get thousands and thousands of resumes a day. You can just go to LinkedIn, click on any job that looks like it has any kind of actual value. Actually, you know what? Pick any job, pick a menial job, and you can see how many people have applied to that job. And it is staggering for some of them. It's like, wow, that's a lot of people for that one position.
Right. And it's about how much time do your recruiters really have and how much do your recruiters really know. If it's a big enough company, I'm pretty sure the first line of recruiting isn't going to be an actual developer who's looking at these resumes. It's
No.
going to be someone who has a checklist to make sure the resume has these things on it. And any resume that doesn't gets tossed out, and the resumes that make it past that might get to a developer or,
that's
the
tier
manager.
2. Tier 1 is
Yeah.
trying to make it through the computer filter, which
Mhm.
is by far and away the hardest part of any job hunt, is trying to make through that computer screen. Because
Right.
the filter has it's completely, it's binary, 1 or 0, true or false. And
Mhm.
it just has a whole bunch of things that it checks for. If it doesn't check them, kicks you out of the pool. And it's like that first tier filter, because there are some people who they can make it through. Once they get to talk to a person, they're good. They're in like Flynn. But that computer filter trying to get through is very, very tough. Now,
Even when you're talking to people, it can be really difficult.
oh, absolutely. Oh,
sometimes.
100%. I've heard some incredibly funny stories from colleagues who have gone to like face-to-face interviews where it's just like a positive negative personality difference between them and the interviewer, and some of
Mhm.
the stories you hear are just absolutely hysterical. Like, you're on the floor, you're dying over there. But when you went for this job, actually, and I'm gonna ask you this question because I just saw it on LinkedIn yesterday as a blowing up topic. In terms of looking for a job at any tier, do you find it's better to network your way to a job, or did you just like raw apply?
Oh, I got this one because I had like a network connection.
Okay.
However, or I don't want to say I got it because of that,
No,
but I got the
you knew
interview
about it
because
because of
of
your
that.
connection.
Yeah. Um, but I mean, really, it is the network that makes or breaks you.
Right.
Um,
Okay.
I know that a lot of companies I've been to, there's always a preference for anyone who has been recommended by someone who works there.
Hmm.
They automatically get the interview, or they'll automatically at least get like a phone call or something, right?
Right.
So it gets you through that computer filter and around things. My resume was handed to the CEO. So
There you go.
like it got me in. And this one was pretty neat. Like, I got to talk to the head of engineering over a lunch before like any phone call interview or anything. I just got to have like a lunch with him, and it ended up going really well. So
That's very cool. Yeah, because that's one thing I'm seeing more now because of that computer filter. Networking with other people in your industry or any industry you want to become part of is almost vital. It's almost essential now
mhm.
because the world has always been, it's not what you know, but who you know. But
Yeah.
now more than ever, now that we're using a binary screen filter to sort through all these people, it is so much more important now for people to go out there and make those network connections, make those introductions of themselves to others.
Oh yeah, definitely. And even like branching out of your industry, right? Like, the person I know is in technology, but he's not even like he's a business person in technology. He's not like a developer or CTO or anything. He's written like a little bit of code before, but that's not his primary focus.
Right.
And like just having him like as my friend, as my colleague, he has opened a lot of doors that I never would have found before. Just because like the people he talks to while they're still like concerned with technology, it's just in different circles, right? Like it's like if I go to a I don't know, Philly Tech Week, right? I'm going to meet a lot of engineers, I'm going to meet a lot of CTOs and everything like that, right? So like I can build that circle, but if I also know people who are adjacent to those roles, then my circle's just bigger.
Right. Nope, that makes a lot of sense. Now, is there any other things that you find, or any other things you could suggest for like anyone just branching into the industry? Like 5 things that they should do or know, anything, like any top 5. What are 5 things you think they should do, any new person should do or know to break into this sector of the industry that you're in?
I would say documentation will save your ass. Because no matter like what people think afterwards, as long as you have it well documented and the reason why you did something you did, then you can't get in trouble for it.
Right.
I mean, if they're unreasonable,
CYA.
you can.
Well, CYA. Always cover your butt.
Exactly. So that saved my companies like a lot of money just because of how well I document things from clients.
Right.
Just from how much we've had to backtrack or like how much extra we've had to charge because they wanted to change so many things that were out of scope, and then they didn't want to pay. And it, because I had documented everything, we could, like, we didn't, but we could have taken them to court over it to get them to pay it.
Right.
And so once they saw that, they're like, oh crap, she was like writing all this stuff down. All right.
Right. So documentation is absolutely critical. What's the second thing?
Just be flexible and be able to like think outside of the box. So I know that's like something that always gets said, right? But if you're too far focused into what you're doing and you can't, like, you think that like your way is the only way it can be done, you're probably wrong, because there's a million ways to do something. So if you're stuck on a problem, just try to maybe think about another problem for a minute, and maybe the problem that you are having will just all of a sudden come to you, even if you're thinking about something completely totally different. Just having that space and having that ability to say like, okay, maybe I'm wrong and maybe I just need a break from this right now. And you can really come up with more solutions and just in general, be a better team player if you're able to kind of like loosen up a little and take other perspectives into account.
Okay. So flexibility.
Yeah.
Okay, what's your third one?
I don't know.
The beauty is I never tell any guest up front that I'm going to make them think of 5 things, because I know when you have to think on the fly, the first 5 things that come to mind are the 5 things that actually matter.
Sometimes they're not, though, right?
Nope, they are.
Like,
nope, always.
Like, what happens when you brainstorm? It's not always the first thing that you come up with is the like right answer.
Nope, lies. I always go with the very first thing I've ever thought of. I never thought about it afterwards. We call it the Andy Samberg method. But in terms of keep going by all means.
Context switching, if you can do it, is a huge skill. Not everyone can do it, but it gets crazy. The faster you can context switch, the more like efficient you can become, and the more problems you can tackle at one time.
Okay.
Let's see.
It's always fun. I enjoy these moments.
I guess always learn, right? Like, you never stop learning. If you think you know everything, you don't. So,
right.
Just keep learning.
Nope, that's very, very true. Like, I see a few people now where they're like, okay, well, I'm graduated, I'm done. It's like, Hooker, it has not even started yet. Like, you are still driving up to the arena. You're not even in the parking lot. So you have keep learning, you have be flexible,
Yeah.
context switch, and
Yeah. Oh, branch out.
branch out.
Don't like stick with one thing, right? Like I've seen so many people do major career changes where like I've seen people go from doing my original like digital media and game design degree to being like an English teacher in Japan.
Yeah, you're talking to
like
one right now.
yeah, exactly. Like you went from med student to computer informations and
Yeah.
like a bunch of stuff. Like it's crazy. So don't be afraid to try new things and really branch out and explore everything there is to offer in life.
Right. No, for sure. Never be afraid to take a leap.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I get you. Leaps are scary, but don't be afraid to take that leap. Well, there we go, guys. That, I think, is going to do it for this episode of Button Mash. I really want to thank Rachel for taking the time to sit down with me, especially on such short notice, and do this interview. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem.
So that is episode 10 of Button Mash, guys, or I should say episode 10A. Guys, thanks so much for tuning in. If you're watching this on the YouTube channel, remember, subscribe. We're trying to get to 1,000 subscribers. Subscribe, follow, share. If you have any questions for Rachel, leave them in the comment box down below, and we'll do a follow-up Q&A session if there's enough of them. And just remember, guys, if you're the smartest guy in the room, find yourself a new room. Guys, thanks so much for tuning in. Have a good night.